They have documented, if you go to National Innovation Foundation website, you will realize they have documented there are about 5,000 innovations that are done by locals in different parts of the country, which has a significant marketable value. And we don't really look at it. We look at what patent is available from either Bell Labs or Intel or IBM or General Electric, or if it is in the agriculture area, some of the agro-process companies, if it is the pharmaceutical area, pharmaceutical companies. But there can be a lot more products can be created and sold out of those existing innovations. So innovations, you need to think about more and beyond just patents and so on. And I talked about value co-creation, in terms of as a competitive advantage. Talked about governance. And then the next question is, how do you do this? There are many ways that you do, but most importantly, before you start looking at transforming your business to the next generation, just ask some fundamental questions. Don't look at what is the market opportunity, is the market growing at 20%, 30%. That may be required at some point in time. Fundamentally, what are the emerging models of collaboration, business models, process models, or investment models that are coming? Because if you are not tuned to what is likely to happen, nobody has a crystal ball, nobody would know. But if you are not tuned into that, and I probably on a monthly basis, I see at least 30 to 40, if not more, smaller companies, very dedicated people, very good products, but they got stuck with something. My son-in-law comes and says, I got to have the latest technology. And then this gentleman goes and buys something. Without recognizing how that technology, is that the relevant and more appropriate technology for him? I'm not asking the question, latest technology, sophisticated technology. And I see a lot of those people. So the question is, that is basically not understanding the environment that is around you. And either over-investing in an area that is inappropriate. Same thing about the skills. And I know one company, they're very good. They have been doing it extremely well. It's a small company, about 20 crores, 25 crores, in the precision components for aircraft manufacturing. They have been doing very well. All kinds of quality, certificates. They got a very good set of clients. Size is limited. 2 years ago, what somebody told him, look, you got to have this mission. So he invested a lot of money into that mission. Sometimes even the consultants may not know aware. What he didn't realize is the machinery is there, but nobody is trained to operate that mission. So the productivity of the existing staff gone because they can't operate the new machine. The old machine is not there. So as a result, in 1 year, his revenue came down from 25 crores to 15 crores, and with a significant loss. So this is what I meant by being aware of the environment. Don't do it because somebody else is doing it. Look at what is relevant technology for you, what is appropriate technology. And then you need to look at all the different elements. Can I absorb that technology? Even if somebody says, you bring that technology. In IT also, I can give you a number of examples. The whole supply chain management and the ERPs and so on. And a good friend of mine actually, he finally decided to junk everything. He went back to his manual. It's a small company. And went back to manual because actually ERP is nothing to do with ERP. But they have not, nobody explained to him. He had the operating plants in the small towns. He can't get any IT fellow to sit there and manage the IT systems. So those are the practical things that you need to think. Entrepreneur created, I'll go through some examples quickly and then I'll stop. Re-examine the value chain and also embrace responsible leadership. Now, this is a very important, I'll spend a couple of minutes understanding how the enterprise creation and growth is emerging. Historically, the primary driver is profit maximization. How do I maximize my profit? Nothing else is important. It's capital-driven investments. If I get investments, then I jump into the project. And independent of the viability, I don't study anything else. Somebody is willing to invest. I have a project, and and I'm going to invest 20 crores, 10 crores, whatever it is. But right now, it is important to look at the shared value maximization. It's not what you maximize to yourself, but how you maximize to the other parties in the value chain. And the institutional form is single, hierarchical. I'm the big boss. I'm going to do what I want to do, and everybody else is workers, which is okay. It happened even in the large companies. That's no longer. It is going to be network structure. In some cases, you are a partner. In some cases, you are actually your role is a secondary role, and primary role is going to be played by some other company. So it is the adaptive networking structure that is going to emerge. So you need to think through that. And then business models, again, I have this focused market strategy. I'm going to focus in this segment, that sector, this geography, which is fine historically. But here, it is not so much as, most markets are saturated. And the second important thing is a guy sitting in China or some other parts of the country in India can actually, through e-commerce and other things, can actually access the market either in California or London or anywhere else. So therefore, exploring the market is not limited by the traditional capabilities. My in-country presence is not there, therefore I cannot really market. Those kinds of situations are no longer valid. So you need to think about that. And the other thing is motivation for driving affluence and abundance. US is built on abundance of resources. Cost was not the primary consideration. Abundance of resources, therefore I give you something and people can afford to pay. I think what the driver now is going to be is affordability and sustainability. Sustainability, I'm not talking about just environmental sustainability. Sustainability of your business. Even today, if you get 200% profit margin, showing excellent profits, if you are not able to sustain your business, that's not going to attract your investors. That's not going to help you survive in your business. And the other important thing is the whole innovation is unplanned and continuous. It's not just one. I got this patent, therefore I'm going to make tons of money. It's no longer going to be the case. Now, the other thing is, what was the complete advantage earlier? Cost and quality. Cost and quality are still important, but the sustainability of the business and ethics, ethics and governance. Ethics and governance, I'm not talking about from the standpoint of meeting the statutory requirements for the government or income tax people and all that, or bribes and corruption. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about building trust and confidence among your employees, among your partners, among your customers. In order to be able to do that, if you and I are, if me and I, one of you are partners, if I'm selling something or creating a value-add product based on your inputs, I got to have trust and confidence that you will be able to give me on time, at the right cost or promised cost, whatever the cost might be, or price, and with the right quality. And that confidence comes not because you told me so, but your systems and processes and mechanisms that you put in place are the ones that communicate to me, I can trust this. So it is that, the governance and the standardization, standards following and open, more like, what I would call transparency, become very, very critical. And then of course, there are attitude towards society. Right now, most companies, at best, including the large companies, I get a corporate social responsibility department. They're going to run some certain things. Maybe they're going to support some NGOs. They're going to clean up once in a while some neighborhoods and so on. And that is the attitude towards the society. But now, what you really need to figure out is how do I co-create value? And the customers may be there and co-create value, and then again go back and to the competitive advantage. Not only I co-create value, but how do I sustain my business? So, which means in some ways you got to talk about and work with and worry about a billion other people as opposed to looking into some Western markets. And I got just in the interest of time, I will quickly, as I said, I can leave these slides behind. CMEX. how do you, unleash the entrepreneurial creativity? Cemex is a Mexican company, is a building material supplier. Okay, and what they did is they actually went and sought low-income families as their partners, not as markets. Markets came much later. In terms of sort of self-financing cells to help them create locally made building materials meeting the standards of Cemex. And then they created some mechanisms to fund those things. So finally what happened was Cemex was able to provide inputs to them, but the value got co-created by the low-income people for building the houses for themselves. As a result, they provide the technical expertise and all that, but as a result, Cemex has grown to a very, very large company. But in the process of that, the people, the low-income families and all that, they also became co-creators of the value. That's how what is meant by, there's an example of unleashing the entrepreneurial creativity. And of course, there's Indian examples, Lupin and Airtel, which you may be familiar with. In a larger company, you take 3M and Google. By the way, Google, most products that became popular are not necessarily planned from CEO's office, some strategy, vice president strategy, designed and defined the process and then gave it. It is actually Google, I don't know how many of you are familiar with, Google has an internal policy that anyone can spend 20% of his or her time doing whatever they want to do using the company resources. So it basically allowing the individuals to do what they like to do apart from their well-defined job. A well-defined job is 80% of the activity, 20% of the time is given to the individuals to do whatever they want. Most products that we use, Outlook, Gmail and all that, came out of those activities, not through the planned activities by the centralized plan. And GE started internally, sort of they re-examined the value chain. There are many examples I can talk about GE, but in the interest of time I won't do that. But this eco-imagination. What they basically did is, can I extend the value chain concept as opposed to my product? Then in the process, they enrolled the people who are part of that value chain. And finally, that itself became an $18 billion business for GE. Right now, that particular division. And it provides basically green energy solutions. But the people who created that solution, those solutions, is beyond GE. They partner with local people at different places, institutions and so on. And that's how they extended their value, re-examined their value chain. There's some other examples. Responsible leadership. Okay. Finally, what does it really require? And I have a tendency to say this, maybe I'm oversimplifying. I think your success as an entrepreneur doesn't depend on the funding. Funding is the last thing. In fact, out of the 17 ventures that we incubated as part of my center, and I refuse to introduce any one of them to any VCs, even though we know a lot of VCs. First, show me how you can do more with less resources, how you can self-support yourself. Sort of putting the plan in such a way that do you understand the ground realities, what it takes money. Because it's very easy. Somebody comes and gives me $5 million or $1 million, and then I have $1 million in bank, I justify all my expenses. I need a marketing manager or marketing whatever, vice president. I need somebody else, I need this somebody else. Before I know, I blew up all my resources, but I have not created anything. So it's a mindset change. And the other one is, you have to go beyond the conventional wisdom in the area of enterprise creation. Conventional wisdom basically says, I got to have a great idea, I got to have an identified market that is, everybody agrees to, agrees that's a great market segment to be in, and then I got to have tons of money in my bank. That's the conventional wisdom. And here what I'm basically saying is you need to go beyond that. Some of them are important at the appropriate time. I'm not downplaying the importance of money. Look at what is happening, all kinds of SME challenges today. There are all financing challenges, but either they get money too late, too little, or by the time half their mental energy goes into acquiring funds or managing the funds, and meanwhile they forget the basic principle of competition, basic principle of valuation, because they are focusing so much on raising the money. I think it's the you got to go beyond the conventional wisdom. So now what are we doing as a center? So what we are really doing is what I call ecosystem. Trying to, ISB is trying to pull all these things together and say, can we create some practical insights that people in this whole chain, be it investors, be it entrepreneurs, be it companies, be it policymakers like planning commission, state governments and so on, or including students, can we distill some of the insights so that as they start building their companies or they become part of the larger ecosystem, larger enterprises, what are the basic elements they need? So that's my center focus is on that ecosystem. There are 4 or 5 broad elements. One is access to finance. We talk about VCs and PEs, but they come much later than that. I got an idea, no VC is going to fund it. My idea may be great. The question is, where do I get funds to prove my proof of concept? How do I do that? And sometimes it's not the money, it's the access to the right advice. If I'm actually, if it is a technology based, I need a guy who understands the technology, who can give me half an hour time to tell me what is good, what is not good, what I'm doing. Where do I get that? So basically our role is to really bring that ecosystem together at ISP, and hopefully, this is basically what we do. Look at the policy, we work with the planning commission, we work with the government of India level and state government level, and access to innovations. Innovations are not necessarily limited to high-flying patents. For example, India spent billions and billions of dollars in the research labs, CSR labs, defense labs, and so on. How much of that is getting translated into marketable products and services serving the needs of larger section of the society? Very little. And then we are identifying what are the bottlenecks. For example, recently I brought about 35 directors of various, 34 others, about 30 directors of various national labs. And we brought them together. Everybody said, I shouldn't say everybody, but some people said, look, we are publishing. It's up to the entrepreneurs to take it. Entrepreneur cannot take a published report, an idea, and say make it as a product and service. There is a concept, there is a research. Then after that, you need to translate that to some sort of innovation. Then you need to do prototyping, test it, scaling, and there is an engineering aspect of it. Some of you who are familiar with the product development, there is a, typically there is what is called gate review. So you don't really, even if it is some marketing guy comes and says it's a great product, a technology guy comes and says, and I know how to build that product, you don't fund up the entire process. There are different gates. And at every gate, there is a review and by the management and says that should we proceed to the next phase. That's how you manage the allocation of the resources and that kind of thing. And of course, the other one is knowledge networks. It's not enough to have money. First of all, it calls for a mindset, innovation level, collaboration, ecosystem, entrepreneurs, and and basically, it is not one institution's job, one person's job. Even if you take the richest person on the globe and expect him or her to create this, cannot be created. It has to be through collective leadership, collective thought leadership, and collective participation, and sharing the responsibility. And that's the only way that the new companies can emerge. And new companies can be sustainable. So I guess with that, I overshot by about 7 or 8 minutes, but I would like to allow enough time to, I guess we got about at least half hour or so.
Like you said, the future is into affordability and demand. So what about iPad and iPhones? They are all premium.
Yeah, no, but the point is, iPads and iPhones, if you take the entire 7 billion people, true, maybe a billion, maybe half a billion, they're absolutely, you're right. What about the products and services needed by the remaining 6 billion people? You can choose to focus on that. But for majority of them, how many Apple-like companies were created?
You mean that the volumes would always fall in
No, it's not always. It's, for example, take telephone instruments in India and cell phones. Why did cell phone penetration is what it is today? And I'm very close to, affordability. Why, iPhones, okay, some of the people who are rich people afford, there is market. But if you were to use only the cell phones that were available at the US market, whatever the premium prices, and what would happen, not only just phones, but even the service. And I'll give you, a broad-based example. The technology is same for India and the United States. Today, there is no technology difference. Okay? So the price of the technology is same because the duties are not significant. Maybe there is still 5%, 10%. So the cost of technology is not significant. The average revenue per user in India is about $5 per month, give and take.